put the ball of your foot completely onto the pedal or platform there, but not any more of the rest of the remainder of the bottom of the foot. Okay. Now I'm going to tilt the seat more upwards. The shoulder pads might be right, but they might not be. They're okay, you think? All right. Now, since I've tilted the seat up, you're closer to that pad, and it's going to be a little more difficult to get your legs straight. Eventually, we'll make this adjustment piece a little longer so you won't have to push quite as far. Move the stock further away from you. And I want you to load up by pushing with your arms and your legs. Yes. You've got to mean it when you push with those arms. The legs have a little bit too much to deal with on there. Now, I want you to brace those legs with your arms up into these shoulder pads. Are these shoulder pads still okay? Okay, now, we don't want, as usual, we do not want to lock your knees. We want them to be slightly bent, but we also want them to be stable. This stabilizes them. You keeping your elbows locked keeps your knees from bending further. And you got to be sort of disciplined about that. It's very easy during the workout to sort of just let your arms relax, and then you don't have any stability for your knees. Now, holding everything from here up stable, let your ankles bend and the heels go forward. There's your starting position. Now, gradually go up with the weight stack, as we say. And go as far as you can get with a moderate effort. Go down into a moderate stretch. Barely start another. It's a little bit fast just after the start on that one. Rick, come on over to about this angle so you see the ankles better, but get some wide as well as close up. Now let me see that start. We should have a deeper stretch this time. Maybe not as deep as possible, but yeah, I like that. When you get to the top of this one, stay there and try to go even higher, which it actually will. You might not feel that it is, but it will actually sort of ooze a little higher. Now, due to the geometry in your ankles, the resistance is falling off a little bit. You can almost lock your ankles, can't you? There are people who can lock your ankles just like locking a knee. And if that occurs, you will need this stop for the movement arm once more.
I don't think I can do
Good. We're looking at putting a moving platform on this machine just for working the calves, which would make the resistance fall off in the contracted position even more. And more people will be able to lock it out unless we curtail it. You're holding your arms very nicely, stable. Okay, let's pause right there. Bend the knees, bend the elbows, and lower everything under control. In a demonstration of the generic workout, the first exercise is to work the buttocks, pre-exhausting them in preparation for doing a leg press, which is the major lower body exercise. The ideal way to pre-exhaust the buttocks in many facilities is to use a converted lower back machine made by Nautilus with the SuperSlow pedestal installed. Now, in order to enter the machine, Colleen, I'd like for you to first step on the step there with your left foot, then step over and across with the right foot. Never step onto or off of this, the pedestal. Then slide down onto that saddle and place your feet there. Now, what we're looking for is what we call a normal attitude, where the knees are slightly lower than the hips. So we have the knees a little too high, which also causes congestion in the ankle and your heels to be off the bottom of that pedestal. So put your feet back onto the step. I'm going to pull the pin, move this downward. Let's try that position. That looks better. Do you still have a little congestion in the ankles?
It's not bad.
Okay. She's got a little congestion in her ankles, but after she rises up out of the seat to perform the exercise, that will be removed. Now, before we attach the seat belt, we want to perform a little mimic of a movement. I'm going to select all of the resistance on the weight stack so that she will get the idea of rising up out of the seat. We call this the get set. And I'm going to teach her the get set. Now, take your hands, interlace your fingers, hold them on your lower ribs. Once we put the belt across her thighs, she would like to keep her hands with fingers interlaced on her ribs and well away from her thighs, pelvis, and belt. And begin to rise out of the seat, rolling your back up the back pad. Good. Probably feels good, doesn't it? Then go back down. Now, that's basically what I want you to do when I tell you to do the get set, except I'm going to have a seat belt around your thighs, and you're only going to be able to come up a slight amount out of the seat. So I'm going to give you reasonable resistance here. I'm going to put the seat belt actually pretty high on your thigh, and we do not want it overly tight. Now, as I pull this seat belt, I do not want to pull it to the point that it feels tight on this hand, because as I pull toward me, it's actually compressing the flesh on the other side of her right leg. So I want to pull it, check it, pull it, check it. And I should be able to put my whole hand, not just my fingers, but my whole hand in here under the belt on most people. Now, keeping that belt sort of high. You will not like that belt across the center of your quadriceps. It will be very uncomfortable. So you want it pretty high on your thigh. Again, perform what we just did, rising out of the seat, except only as, now don't move the weight yet. Try to rise up out of the seat first. Here we would like to have the subject rise into the get set with a distinct separation with the commencement of the positive. You do not want to blend these together. Now, it is possible, like you see here, that we're using a resistance that is so light that it's very difficult not for that to happen. But ideally, they should be with a separation. Then start leaning back. As you extend the trunk and the hips, good. Stay up against the belt. And as you extend the trunk and hips, try to keep your knees at the same angle. You've got the basic movement now. Do that again. Now, on this next repetition, we're going to introduce something a little different. Go ahead as you have been. When you get to the top out position, stay there. Now, I want you to gradually push force down into your heels, back onto the roller pad and straight up into the belt, like you're trying to touch your nail to the ceiling. Gradually tighter. Make sure you're still ventilating. Then unsqueeze, that's the squeeze technique. Ease out of that position. Come down a little faster, not much faster. Then slow down and barely start another one. Realize that the squeeze technique is very valuable, but if you perform it suddenly, it can be quite violent. So be very careful right here as you apply it. Wait till you get to the top of the movement. Then gradually squeeze, tighten that butt, make sure you're ventilating, then ease out of that position. And do all of the rest of them with that squeeze technique. Never apply the squeeze technique on the first 2 repetitions.
At the top of the 4th repetition, this sequence of words would be best to tell the subject. Squeeze, unsqueeze, ease out of the contracted position, go slightly faster.
And keep your chin a little closer to your neck, to your sternum. Squeeze and ventilate and unsqueeze. Now we're going to do a few incorrect things. Keep going as you are, except note that it is rather natural, particularly as it gets difficult, to straighten your knees. Go ahead and straighten them and show what happens. See, she's actually coming out of the belt here and her butt is back onto the seat back. And it's preventing her from extending or completing the range of motion on the machine, even though her back is already pretty much extended. So those things are out of phase with one another somewhat. Okay, correct that. Pull the belt a little higher up your thigh since it's come down some. We'll do another one. This one will be correct. Now, to keep that from happening, if it becomes a problem, you want to think about sliding under the seatbelt. Not that you really want the knees to move, you don't. Now, as you come forward, let your knees go forward. This is another discrepancy. She's become passive and letting her whole pelvis come forward, which is not what we want. Her heels are coming off the seat pad, the foot pad. Now, and her heels are also coming out of the pedestal. Okay, let's correct that, yes. Tense up the thighs, hold the butt a little backwards into the seat, but don't straighten those knees like we did on the previous discrepancy. Okay. Now do it correctly this time. You're holding your knees pretty good. Got those thighs tensed so everything stays in place. Okay, now we'll pretend that you've reached failure and we're finished the exercise. You're going to come down, pretending you're going to do another repetition, but then don't do one. You don't want anything to be different. And then relax down into the seat. We'll take the seat belt off. Put your feet back onto the step, off of the pedestal. Stand straight up as though you're going to walk that way. Have no thought of turning. Now, after you're standing, pivot on your toes, on your feet. Give me your wrist and step off. Good. You do not want to twist or turn your torso, only on the pivoting of the feet. Now, as you come to me from some other exercise, particularly a lower body exercise like the leg press, your legs are going to be quivering. They may want to buckle, and I want you to come into the machine and put your right thigh against that seat. And turn to me at about a 45%. It gives you something to sort of brace yourself against. I want you to put your hands up like this, elbows against your ribs, palms up with your hands closed, rather your fingers closed, thumb against the hand. Stay like this. Do not try to help me or it will slow me down. I'm going to sort of dress you like a mannequin. I'm going to put this on you, like so. Then I want you to sort of waddle onto this. Do not step over it like straddling. Then I want you to reach up. Make sure your thighs are against those rollers so that you're not too far back and that you are more likely to reach this. And put your hands nearly to my thumbs. All right. Now, sit on down. As you sit, do not let your crotch come close to this post. If you do, you're not going to be able to pick your feet up to put them on this step down here. time to let go, it is yours. Now, this might not be enough weight to do this exercise. Stand on back up again. Let's add a little more. Give you about 100 pounds. Walk on down. Now, lean way on back. You can do this. Using your whole body, not your arms. Go ahead.
You know, I want 20 now.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, that's good right there.
See? Yeah. Now
Okay,
see, the
so-
cam's falling off a little too much there for you.
Okay,
Okay, now come on back up, and I'll retime the cam.
okay.
That was on the 3. That was for maximum fall off, or I should say most advanced fall off. This is retarded fall off.
This will be later.
And I'll give you a little less resistance here. All right, try that. Now, extend on that.
Oh,
You don't want to stay low with your head for very long because that's a position where you've got your blood pooling in your skull. Just to go down there briefly and come back up, you ought to be okay.
okay.
If someone had any brain damage or surgery, you wouldn't do that at all. So you've got a back extension exercise. Well, you're not really dependent on your arms, especially with these hooks. Feels comfortable, doesn't it?
That's great.
Yeah. Stay back here just for a few seconds. Tighten your butt in your back. And come back up. Of course, this is not as perfect as building a lower back machine.
Yeah.
Having body torque canceled and all that. And now walk out. Good. Now, let's step out for a second. Turn. A conventional and probably more convenient approach to working the buttocks and lower torso is to do the conventional deadlift, particularly stiff-legged deadlift. Now, a stiff-legged deadlift can be quite dangerous if it is performed incorrectly, but if it is performed correctly, it is not only safe, but also very valuable and productive. Moving slowly and in a singular plane with no twisting, turning, with no temptations to turn the head, to hear someone else across the room, if that is followed, well, then it is quite safe. Now, there is one subtle problem that can occur, and that is once you teach somebody to move slowly, lowering and raising the weight, they will still tend to change direction subtly. In other words, they come down slowly and they go up slowly, but the change of direction is abrupt. It's more like this. And that little pop is extremely dangerous. Now, we have a barbell here. We're going to have Colleen using the hooks as before.
Now, she starts this to load. She's bending the knees, and she's going to keep them bent until she gets as far up as possible. She's going to straighten her knees last of all. Now, she wants to bend over, bending at the waist to some degree. You don't want to entirely bend the knees. If you bend the knees too much, your heels will come off the floor and you'll be unstable standing on the balls of your feet. Now, she was supposed to come down with her knees straight on that first repetition to commence the first real repetition, but she didn't. So we're going to load up again here. She's only going to straighten her knees as she gets to the top. She's going to rock back, which is fine to do as long as you don't stay there. She's coming down right over the instep of her foot, hopefully, but with her center of gravity, it's okay for her to come on out toward the toes. Most people should be over the instep. She's rocking back. As she comes down, she's going only as far as she can get a moderate stretch, keeping her knees straight. She will go no lower than that. Now, Colleen is very flexible. She could actually not only touch the floor properly, but she could probably go a little further, which we might succeed with by having her stand on a platform, but that's really unnecessary. Probably not worth the trouble. Very nice lower turnarounds, no popping. I like that. Now note, at my command, she is extending her neck backwards on this repetition, which is inappropriate. I don't like to see that. Do not lead with the head. Try to uncurl the trunk, head, and neck all at the same time. Now back to the proper mode here, keeping the head slightly flexed as she finishes the motion. And she's going to come back down. This is her finish, just as though she's doing another one, except when she gets to her stretch, she's then going to stop, bend the knees to stand up erect, slowly of course, and properly finish.
Better. If I set this for you, you come in. I'm going to bring this around for you. Just like this. Okay, get in. And I want you to hold that there. We're doing a handoff. You must not move. It is yours. Now, I will permit you to leave your knees bent as long as I don't see any inward rotation.
Yes.
Or, excuse me, the main thing I don't want to see is external rotation, which would be like this. I'll let your knees remain bent as long as I don't see them. And as long as I don't see you pulling with your calf. And when you pull with your calf, you're probably going to see external rotation along with it. Again, like in abduction, which is this, you should not have the feet pulled up or pointed. They should just be flopping out there on the ends of the legs. Okay, now, come on out with that. On the first repetition, you only want a conservative stretch. That means just a little bit of stretch. Now bring it back in. And everybody is different. But a conservative stretch means just getting a little bit, just far enough to feel some stretch. And repetitions thereafter, only a moderate stretch. Never get into aggressive, extreme stretching for this exercise. Not good for the hips, and it's not good for the pelvis. And that is especially true with pregnant women, because they have the hormones circulating in them to open up the pubic symphysis, which not only affects the pubic symphysis, but it affects the other joints as well. Now note that I have your head without a head pad here. And even if the seat back is approximately at the same angle, many people can go without a head pad, especially on the Medix version of this machine. Now, I like to give a head pad on this machine. But because we have your torso flexed as you reach this position, now stay right there and try to squeeze, do a squeeze technique, starting with about the third one, and then ease back out. Do that on every one, starting with the third one. Do not do that with the first one or two repetitions. One thing you might do when you get here is sort of turn your knees a little in. You'll actually feel that in the groin.
Note that the movement arms clapped as she reached this position. That indicates that she fell through. Total quiet is what you want it to finish.
And if you want to, if you elect to, you can actually do this with your knees straight. Try that. However, when you do it with your knees straight, you're probably limited in the stretch by your hamstrings. Now, I'm starting to see that those pads are almost on your knees. You would probably, in your case, like to have a back pad. So let's exit the machine and improve upon that. There we go. Yeah, trying to make that adjustment with some load there. Not quite as good. Yes. Like that a little better? Okay. Now let's try you with a head pad.
On the subject of head positioning and whether or not you need a head pad, the video is not clear in either discussion of AB or AD. Note that with a deduction, where the knees are being brought inward with positive contraction, that the torso is flexed. This brings the center of gravity of the head more forward and with a less likelihood of you needing a head pad. Now, this Nautilus machine has the seat back reclined a little further than the Med-X. Therefore, you may still need a head pad. Now, when we do the AB duction, the center of gravity is further back because as positive contraction occurs and the knees go away from each other, the pelvis is pushed forward, the back is extended, the chest raises, and the center of gravity, of course, moves backwards. Therefore, you're going to need some head support there. So that is what to look for, and whether or not you need head support, or at least that's one of the factors. Now, when I say that's one of the factors to consider, realize that the Med-X AB and AD machines have seat backs that tilt. It is my preference to keep the tilt or reclination of the seat back in the middle position for most applications. This seems to give the best results by and large for trying to involve the musculatures we intend to address, as well as trying to keep the lower back tension to a dull roar. Note that the earlier Nautilus machines are fixed because back when those were designed, we made hard decisions that these middle of the road positions were most ideal. Now, in some cases, you may want to tilt up higher or back further with those Med-X machines, but I recommend that you try to avoid that.
We're using a head pad even on this machine more and more. You don't really want to do it, okay? Feels like your neck is not neutral in your particular situation. And it's more clear cut with the Med-X AD duction because their seat back angle is just a little bit more vertical. Now, Rick, come over here and about this angle. And I want you to see, focus on her pelvis and about, a foot around it. And I want you to show something that really disturbs you. As you get to your stretch, Colleen,
Mhm.
go a little further than the stretch by lifting your pelvis. Yeah, like that.